Welcome back, history seekers. Oh, goddamn. It's the wrong microphone. Again, the curse of the wrong microphone. Hang on. Right. That should be better. It just drops out for no reason. Tonight, welcome to the final episode of the history of the Golem, or to be apt, the fabrication of Rabbi Yodl Rosenberg, the wondrous deeds of the Maharal. Somebody in the comments pointed out that really referring to it as a forgery is incorrect, because that would imply an original document, whereas really this is just a fabrication. You may be disappointed. The death of the Golem is not really as spectacular in this one, basically, right? Like, the Golem, it just sort of like, they just, ambush it in his bed, basically, and and he just dies, right? Like, just not anywhere like the sort of more spicy versions contained in other stuff that I'll go on to. But first, we have the tale of how the Maharal, through his infinite wisdom, made Prague safe for the Jewish people forever. Well, I guess until the 1930s, basically, right? It's quite a tale. The actual death of the Golem is really really tiny, sort of like part. So given that Rosenberg's focus is clearly on the accusations against the Jews in Europe and the sort of resulting unpleasantness, shall we say, that followed, I thought I would read this section of the text. Wait, where is it? Here we go. The last blood libel in Prague during the Maharal's lifetime. Okay, so he doesn't say like forever, but the Maharal, having driven out the evil father Thaddeus, he was a baron, right, and having stopped the marriage of a pure Jewish maiden to the son of a duke and saved her from a life of comfort, only to then, through the wily machinations of Hashem, for her to wind up with that very same Gentile boy after he converted, right? Thus getting the life of luxury without having to give up her faith to, those Christians, right? Very, very sneaky, very, very wily, right? And when their urge to convert the Jewish people is thwarted, they resort to tricks and subjugation. What's the word I'm looking for? Subterfuge. you know what I'm saying, right? Sati Sapiente, no entropy tonight. No, entropy is dead. Entropy is kaput. Because they were handling funds for Nick Fuentes, the Canadian government, no doubt sort of backed by the glowy industrial complex, went after them, tracked them down, and they are now dead. So if you wish to donate to the channel, Ko-Fi is the only way to do it. And speaking of Ko-Fi, I believe we have one. Oh, my windows are like all messed up. Oh, what's going on? What's going on here? Yes, we have a donation, a beer from Mikey Bikey. Thank you, Mikey Bikey. That I promise that money will go straight into beer. Yes, entropy is kaput. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. So let's get into what will be the final part of the Tale of Golem. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week. I've had a bunch of people give me like very, very cool suggestions for like weird stories out of history. If you have like a weird historical event you'd like me to cover, leave it in the comments. I've harvested like a whole list, which is like great because it sort of stops me from needing to think stuff up, which is like great. And chat is basically my second brain at this point, right? So why not mine my second brain for great ideas and stuff? Thank you, chat, and thank you, Mikey Bikey, for your contribution. Please contribute, to history beers or something. I promise to only spend it on historically accurate beer. I don't know, like whatever, right? The last blood label in Prague during the Maharal's lifetime. He was known as a bringer of peace to his people, a hammer to the Christians. Those goddamn Christians, always doing stuff, but they wouldn't rest. The Christians, They're always getting up to trouble. What really needs to happen, obviously, is for the Christians to be ruled by wise leaders like the Maharal. And then none of this injustice would ever happen. And fortunately, it looks like the world that we live in now is basically that. So, there will be no more of these accusations, and everything will be swimmingly from this point on, I'm sure. 3 years had passed in peace, and thanks to the Maharal, neither Prague nor the rest of the country experienced any blood libel tragedy. For the enemies of Israel trembled with fear upon hearing the wondrous deeds of the Maharal, who, by virtue of his great wisdom, was unable to uncover all mysteries. Right, so the Jewish population of Prague, in an attempt to get peace, made themselves useful and engendered great friendship between themselves and the Gentile population. No, wait, that's not what it says at all. It says that they threatened them. Oh, that's not very no, I can't believe that. They're usually such incredibly sort of like kind and friendly people. I'm sure it'll say further down how they decided to like integrate, and they all came together as like one people, and that's why all of the tumult stopped, right? Nevertheless, in 1589, another terrible blood libel took place in Prague, and here is what happened. Oh, well, mate, Rabbi Rosenberg fucking says that you can take that to the bank, bros. A very rich man of a good man. I'm fine. A very rich man of a good family named Rabbi Aaron Gins. This is where you get the name Ginsburg from, I imagine. Lived in Prague. He was both learned and prosperous. In him, Torah learning and eminence were combined. He had 3 married daughters and supported his 3 scholarly sons-in-law who continuously studied Torah. So, right, so they're like what do they call them? The ones in Israel, all they do is like study Torah all day. Oh, my mind is blanking. I'm sure, yeah. He also had 3 sons and another daughter, none of whom was married. I swear this guy did not get an editor to go over his stuff. He's probably like, nobody is qualified enough to edit my work. It's so incredibly like awesome. Rabbi Aaron's business was in tanning hides. He lived with his family in a walled house in the city, and his tannery with 20 full-time employees, 12 Jews and 8 Christians, was located in a suburb. I love the way like they're just totally like, allowed to be like, oh yes, right? Like, we strictly keep track of like who's who in our business, After these tanners had worked together for some years, the Christians learned to speak Yiddish, just like the Jews. Among the Christian workers were 3 brothers from a village 4 kilometers from Prague. They had no father, only a poor elderly mother who lived in an earthen house at the edge of the village. The 2 older brothers were called Karl Kozlovsky and Heinrich Kozlovsky, but the name of the much younger 3rd brother was not known in the tannery. He was nicknamed Kolizek because he started working in the tannery while still quite young and was a wild boy who loved to dance and prance like an imp. He sounds like trouble, especially if he's a Gentile. Am I right, bros? Ashamed of his real name, the 2 oldest brothers never wanted to reveal it. The authorities did not permit his father's family name to be recorded in the municipal birth registry, for his unmarried mother, Yadvina, had borne him 2 years after becoming a widow. Therefore, he was recorded in the birth registry as a bastard with only his mother's name. His real name was Jan. The 2 older brothers, already married with children, were living in Prague, and since their widowed mother was a poor washerwoman and could neither care for nor properly support her son, she pleaded with her 2 older sons, ask the tannery owner to hire your younger brother, and this way he'll constantly be under your watchful eye. See, that's what the elderly widow needs is a high interest loan. Clearly, right? Take out a few credit cards and stuff like that. Wait, hang on. Odysseys. It's working. It's working. The brothers acceded to her request and kept asking Rabbi Gins about a job for Kozilek until he finally consented. Such a nice guy. When the boy started working at the tannery, he was 15 years old. After 3 years of diligent labor, he began receiving the wages of a full-fledged employee. During that period, an incident occurred that stemmed from his uninhibited frolicking, habitual with him since childhood. While jumping from one spot to another, he fell into a pit of stinking liquid in which untanned hides had been soaking. He was pulled out, injured and in pain, just barely alive, then lay in his sickbed, ailing for 2 weeks. By the way, this was a pretty common thing in the tanning business, right? Like, before we had all these like environmental regulations and stuff like that, right? The way they used to tan hides is they would dig a big ass pit and fill it with, oh, God knows what, actually, right? Like, I don't really know. What I do know is that there are a bunch of events throughout history where people have like accidentally fallen into these like tanning pits, and like bad stuff has happened to them. Famously, Adam Smith, that sort of incredible artist, such that he was apparently one day walking, and he got so wrapped up in his own thoughts, he missed his turning and walked like another 6 miles or something, and then fell into a tanning pit. He had to be like dragged out because, that's the kind of like massive artist he was. If Adam Smith was alive now, I don't know, he'd probably be running a YouTube channel, I guess. So, Jan he was very, very badly injured in this industrial accident, which of course was in no way the fault of the owner of the tanning business. Doubly so because the owner was Jewish. Okay. Surgeons also, he was pulled out, injured and in pain, just barely alive, then lay in his sickbed ailing for 2 weeks. God, that must have been fucking some horrible stuff in that tanning pit. Surgeons also operated on his right hand and amputated 2 fingers. Gradually, Jan recuperated, but now he was no longer capable of doing his former tasks. For besides his maimed right hand with its missing 2 fingers, he had become physically debilitated and walked about in a state of perpetual fatigue, sometimes even spitting up blood. So he probably got a lung full of like whatever horrible crap was in the tanning pits. Rabbi Gins wanted to dismiss Kozilek because he was not doing his assigned job at the tannery, and he did not want to pay wages in vain. Useless to me. Get the fuck out. But Kozilek's 2 brothers stood up firmly to the tannery owner and did not let him be ill-treated. They adamantly demanded that Kozilek keep his job and get his former wages. And if you insist on firing him, they told the owner, we demand that you pay Kozilek a large sum of money for becoming crippled at your tannery. Oy vey, not a large amount of money. This disagreement between the brothers, and Rabbi Gins prompted several arguments. Eventually, however, they compromised. Kozilek would stay on but work as a porter and sweep up the trash in the tannery and the courtyard. As for wages, they agreed he would get only half of his former pay. From then on, the fire of revenge against Rabbi Gins smoldered secretly in the brothers' hearts, and they schemed vengeance, since they considered the compromise a terrible injustice, and Kozilek's work carrying everything and gathering the garbage, humiliating hard labor. In addition to his job in the tannery, he had to go to Reb Aaron's house in Prague, clean the yard, and heat up the stoves on Shabbat. Bro. Kozilek always cried in front of his brothers and bemoaned his bitter fate, for the doctors told him that tuberculosis had penetrated his body and he constantly spat up more blood. Probably more likely it's the stuff from the tanning pits, but this is an entirely fictional story, so I don't even know what to think. He was disgusted with his life and felt he had no recourse but to abandon his job and flee while he still had living breath in him. Perhaps he would be cured once he was free. On Purim Day towards evening, after the table had been set in his house, Rabbi Gins sat down with his entire family for the Purim feast. And because most people love the rich, a host of friends and admirers came to revel in the joyous Purim feast with him. Naturally, there was no lack of intoxicating spirits. Naturally, it is Purim after all. In honor of Purim, drinks were plentiful, fine wine in big silver goblets, and many confections. And of course, Kozilek was present too, for he had to continually attend to the guests. I was like, I don't know, just, this seems like a very capitalist kind of, I don't know, right? When they went home after midnight, Rab Aaron and his family, thoroughly exhausted, fell into a deep slumber and slept sweetly. Oh, isn't that nice? But Kozilek used this event for his own purposes. He stole into the inner rooms of Rab Aaron's house and gathered up 10 big silver goblets and about a dozen silver spoons and forks. He also took Rabbi Gins's silver watch and ran away that same night. No one saw him stealing, and no one knew where he had fled. Ungrateful wretch! You get injured at our factory, right? We agree to keep you on as a dog's body, and this is how you repay our generosity. When the theft was discovered the next morning, cries rang out in Rab Gin's house. And when they saw that Kozilek had disappeared, they realized at once that the robbery was his handiwork. Reb Aaron sent for the two brothers and told them what their younger brother had done. He said, I suspect that you lured him to do the stealing, and that both the stolen goods and the thief are hidden at your house. The two brothers began to argue with their boss about his suspicion. We don't know a thing about it, they shouted, and we can't possibly know where our brother has run off to, for he is an orphan with no family. The two brothers did not want to reveal that they still had an elderly mother, because they knew their brother had sought refuge with her. As soon as Rab Aaron would learn about their old mother, he would shortly rush there at once with policemen to search her house. Rab Aaron informed the police chief about the theft, and the latter sent his men to search the brothers' houses, but they found nothing suspicious in them. This whole incident deepened the brothers' hatred of Rab Aaron. Although they continued to work in the tannery, they had drawn their livelihood from it for 10 years. They decided to take their revenge upon him. Bum, bum, bum. Hurt chain. Tanning fluid is typically a highly acidic mixture made from various organic compounds. Not good at all. Yeah, I mean, mate. I mean, if it tans hides, right, like animal hides, imagine what it's going to do to human skin. Oof. Late on Friday afternoon, just as the doors of the tannery were closing for 2 days, the two brothers made their way to their impoverished mother to find out what was happening there. Upon their arrival, they saw their brother Kozilek lying in a sickbed. He could no longer speak, for he was dying. After fleeing from Prague during the night, he had become overheated while running and caught cold. At his mother's house, blood spurted from his throat, and his body succumbing to the tuberculosis, he fell unconscious. So, I mean, this fabrication obviously is supposed to be written, in the 1600s, right? So tuberculosis, generally speaking, would be just decreased lung function. He was still in bed when the brothers arrived on Friday night and died soon thereafter. That same night, you can see where this is going. The two brothers tried to have Kozilek buried on Sunday in the village, but since they had no money to pay the local priest for a proper ritual with all the traditional religious rituals, they took with them Reb Aaron Ginz's watch that Kozilek had stolen. They came to the priest with the following request. Our mother's third son has just died. She's a poor old widow without a penny to her name, except for this silver watch she has from her husband. We brothers are poor too, and a little bit of money we use for other burial expenses. That's why we're asking you to please take this silver watch in exchange for burial. We don't want to trouble you. They added, to bury him with elaborate Christian ceremony. We just want permission to have his burial and have him buried, and we'll do that quietly. The priest agreed. He took the watch and gave them permission to bury their brother in the village's Christian graveyard. What, like there was another graveyard in the village? Like, what, there was like a Muslim graveyard in the village? What the Christian graveyard? Okay. In the death registry book, he recorded the day when Jan, son of Yadvina, was buried. On Sunday evening, he was buried without fanfare by his mother, his two brothers, and the old grave digger. Except no one knew of this, for the mother lived at the edge of the village near the cemetery. Oh, this is so repetitive. When they returned after burial, the two brothers sold all the stolen items in the village and gave their mother the money. Then they left her and returned to Prague. How horrible. The following morning on Monday, the two brothers, exhausted from their journey, did not get to the tannery until noon. Why so late? An angry Reb Aaron rebuked them. Why couldn't you come to work on time this morning? Along with his reprimand, he also heaped scorn upon them about the theft. And you no doubt got yourselves drunk these last 2 days and 3 nights with the money you got from the stolen goods. This insult infuriated the two brothers. They were so angered that they could not even respond and proceeded to their work. But because they had had their fill of their boss, they secretly decided that the time for revenge had come. Bum, bum, bum. At night, the two brothers conspired and pondered the manner of vengeance against their master. They agreed on the following plan. Since no one knew where their brother Kozilek had fled to, and no one in the village knew about their brother's death and burial, they could easily use this incident to initiate a blood libel against their boss by means of Kozilek's corpse. Wait. Kozilek's meant to be like 18, 19 years old? What the? Oh, whatever. Okay, fine. That very week, they chose the night to execute their evil scheme. The two brothers came to the village where Kozilek was buried. Under the cover of darkness, they opened his grave, stole his body from the coffin, and replaced the empty coffin in the grave. Then they slit the throat of the corpse with a knife to make it seem like he had been slaughtered. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to look really convincing. They stripped Kozilek's body of the clothing and boots he usually wore in the house of his master and wrapped them in a blood-stained white sheet. That night, they journeyed to Prague with him and stopped by the Jewish cemetery at the side where the road led from Prague to the next village, since it was used by many travelers. They dug a grave next to the cemetery fence and waited for a passing wagon with Christian riders. What? As opposed to Muslim riders. A lot of Muslims or Buddhists roaming around in wagons in Prague. The way this is written is just weird. What there'd be a lot of Jewish wagons rolling around, okay, whatever. Whereupon they began to lower the corpse into the ground. While so doing, they spoke loudly, mockingly, and in an unruly manner in Yiddish, for they were fluent in that tongue. See, that was a mistake letting them learn. They did all this to attract the attention of passers-by and to elicit questions about what they were doing here. See, sneaky. Very, very, very sneaky. Just then, a wagon with Christian passengers came by, or, just normal people in Prague. When they heard the mocking tone of the grave diggers, they stopped the wagon. "Who are you?" they asked, "and what are you doing here?" "We're Jewish grave diggers," the two brothers replied in Yiddish, and then added, laughing, "When a wild, nasty, and filthy young fellow who was neither Jewish nor Christian died, the Jews didn't want to bury him in the cemetery, but only under the fence. And since for us Jews it's a shame to bury such an abominable creature during the day, they told us to bury this corpse in the dark of night." Were there a lot of atheists in 17th century Prague? I'm, I don't know, okay. Look, I suspend disbelief, right? The Christian travelers accepted this explanation. Once they saw the body placed into the grave, they immediately resumed their journey to the next village. Sneaky. The two brothers then took the bundle of clothes, the boots, and Kozilek's hat, all items very well known to the tannery workers, and put them in a bag and set out for Prague. Then, under the cover of night, they sneaked into the cellar of Rabbi Gin's house and hid the bundle of clothes in a pile of sand they found there. They left it while it was still dark, and no one knew a thing about their evil deeds. The next morning, the two brothers spread a rumor in several places where crowds were gathered. Some Christians who live in a village near Prague told us that 2 nights ago, they saw Jews burying a Gentile boy under the fence of the Jewish cemetery. These Jews said they were burying an atonement sacrifice. And to this rumor, the two brothers added, "This must be the sacrifice of a Christian who has fallen into the hands of the Jews, so they can mix Christian blood into their matzahs. For it's a custom to call such a sacrifice an atonement." Yeah, all right, whatever. This rumor quickly flew from one end of the city to the other, and naturally at that time there were many Jew haters in Prague who for some years had been yearning to accuse the Jews of ritual murder, but were unsuccessful because of the mighty Maharal. Now that they heard the story, with the passing of each day, they began to spread it with increasing frequency. See, it spreads like a disease, bros. Some people began to inquire in all the Christian houses to learn if any Christian had disappeared recently. The two brothers also helped to spread the nefarious rumor in the city. They let it be known quietly that they had learned from a trustworthy source that the sacrifice buried by the Jews was a Christian boy named Kozilek, who had worked for several years for the Jewish tannery owner, Reb Aaron Gins. When this Kozilek was hurt at the tannery, his master concluded that he was now very weak and no longer fit for work. Since the owner could not get rid of him, he hit upon the idea of using him as a sacrifice for the Passover holiday. All right. On the night of their Purim feast, when the master had many guests and had drunk lots of wine, they also gave young Kozilek lots of wine to drink and made him so drunk he fell asleep. Then they brought him down to the cellar where they slaughtered him. To avoid falling under suspicion, the morning after the Purim feast, the factory owner spread a rumor that Kozilek had robbed him the night before and fled. What the brothers said spread with increasing intensity all over Prague. See, misinformation. until it reached the chief of police and his men. And inasmuch as many questions were being asked of him in high places as to why he did not thoroughly investigate this matter, he was obliged to intervene. So the police chief was not planning to intervene until he was forced to. Okay. The police chief and his men went to that village near Prague. They rigorously questioned the Christians who had traveled that night and witnessed the burial, as opposed to the Hindus. The latter described all they had seen. On his way back to Prague, the police chief brought along several villagers to point out where the burial had taken place. After the chief came home, he sent a message to summon one by one the Maharal and 3 heads of the community, each of whom was known as the Primus, as well as the 2 grave diggers. Bum, bum, bum. He thoroughly questioned each of them separately and asked them to explain who was ordered to be buried beneath the cemetery fence. But each man gave the same reply. They knew nothing of this. They assured him that such an incident had never happened, and that the anti-Semites were just looking for a pretext for a blood libel. Then the police chief, accompanied by his officers and several Jewish gravediggers, went to the burial site where they looked for and found the grave. They took the corpse out of the grave, removed the dirty sheet, and lay the body on the ground in the presence of all assembled in order to identify him. Meanwhile, a great crowd had gathered in front of the cemetery, among them the 2 brothers who had secretly fabricated this entire misfortune. When the corpse was shown to the public, the 2 brothers burst out of the crowd and fell with their faces to the ground in front of the body. Oh, look at them play acting. Those Christians, mate, you can't trust them. Ah, whoa, my brother, they cried loudly, wailing and lamenting. First they turned to the crowd and shouted, look what these damn Jews have done to us. Come and look, all of you, how the cursed Aaron, that tannery owner, slaughtered our younger brother. Then they asked their friends and co-workers at the tannery to confirm that the dead boy was indeed Kozilek. They recognized him at once. The brothers pointed out the starkest sign for everyone to see, the missing 2 fingers of his right hand that the doctors had amputated. He's not that, like, how decomposed is this body supposed to be? Like, I mean, mate, don't worry about it, right? It's like, he kind of looks familiar. I don't know, he's missing 2 fingers. It could be anyone. Have you seen? See, this author, he needs to watch a bit of CSI Miami or something, right? read some like Thomas Harris, right? Read like, the Hannibal Lecter, like, watch the films, right? Get a little bit of like knowledge of like, The screams and wails of the 2 brothers agitated the mob. They became enraged and wanted to attack the Jews then and there and tear them to pieces. But despite the police chief's order to all the policemen and soldiers present to prevent violence, the crowd began throwing stones from afar. A calamity was about to take place, an outbreak of violence against all Jewish homes. But the mob was thwarted only because of the Maharal's efforts. He rushed to the police chief and requested severe measures to ensure that no harm befall Jewish homes and property until the matter was brought before the judges to determine beyond doubt whether the 2 brothers' claim was true or not. Okay. So they went to the cops, and the cops instituted severe measures to promote social cohesion. I never heard of anything like that happening now. Yeah. In the end, the truth will be revealed, and everyone will see that this accusation is false, the Maharal assured him. How does the Maharal know that it's false? He's got the mystical power. It must be false. I mean, I'm just saying, right? Like, surely you should wait until there's some evidence. Don't worry about it. The police chief agreed with him and protected the Jewish quarter from looting and violence. But this did not stop the 2 Kozlowski brothers. Make a thorough search of Rabbi Ginz's cellar was their further request of the police chief. Rumor has it that our brother was slaughtered in that very cellar, so you might very well find traces of his blood or other evidence to confirm the truth of the rumor. How is this rumor like? So he's there's a rumor he was killed in the cellar. Who started this rumor? I don't know. Nobody saw it, but there's a rumor. Oh, God, this is so gay. This guy, so the book that he wrote after this, which was like about the Jewish breastplate, right, was lifted straight from Arthur Conan Doyle. And you can see why, because this guy is an absolutely terrible, terrible detective fiction writer. Like really, really, really terrible, honestly, right? Like I'm going to write a detective fiction, but I know nothing about it. The police chief was obliged to follow their suggestion, along with many policemen and soldiers, as well as the two brothers and some of their friends who worked at the tannery. The police chief suddenly set upon Rabbi Ginzer's house. They made a thorough search, even digging into the earthen floor of the cellar and the pile of sand. There they found Kozelek's bundle of clothes, which the two brothers and their co-worker friends recognized at once. Why wouldn't they just burn them? Right? I'm just saying. Afterward, Rabbi Ginz and his three sons-in-law were arrested. Their wives and children were also brought to the jail. The police chief locked Ginz's residence and his tannery and placed the royal seal on them. The following day, many priests arrived carrying their flags, accompanied by a mass of people. They dressed the body of the boy in his clothes found in the cellar. Then they eulogized him amid sermons full of abuse and contempt against the Jews and bore him aloft with great honor to the cloister. Before taking him out, so how decomposed is this body meant to be, right? I mean, you see the point that Rosenberg is trying to make here, right? Christians, they're just always looking for an excuse, right? Something happens, even though it's fake, they like lionize, right? No doubt he's like basically trying to say that, you know, all these other cases throughout history, like Hugh of Lancaster and stuff, is literally exactly the same thing. The Christians absolutely made it up. Okay. Before taking him out for burial, the priest sent a message to the police chief with a request to bring the murderous Jew to the cloister. For according to the laws of their religion, the murderer had to confess his crime in the presence of his victim and beg for his forgiveness. What? One of the weirdest things about this book, I've got to say, is the way that Rosenberg imagines Christianity, right? Like his view. It's like, you know, when Gentiles start looking into Judaism and they get sort of a very, very like sort of warped view of it, or they take all like the worst stuff, and you get what's commonly known now as like low IQ anti-Semitism or whatever. You get this sort of similar thing, but it's never pointed out that the opposite side has an equally sort of stupid and distorted view of Christianity. Oh no, they totally understand Christianity, right? It's just you can't understand Judaism. It's very, very complicated, don't you see? The police chief could not contravene Christian law, and under the heavy guard of many police and soldiers, had Rabbi Aaron Ginz sent in chains to the cloister. When they placed him in front of the boy's body in the cloister, Rabbi Aaron was terrified. His face turned white as chalk. Then the head priest approached. Your hands have spilled this innocent blood and slit the throat of this corpse. So what, you slit the throat afterwards? Whatever. But you can now rectify your crime somewhat by asking the corpse for forgiveness and sewing up the dead boy's throat with your own hands. What? Okay. I mean, I don't see this. Whatever. As my hands did not slit his throat, Rabbi Aaron replied, so they will not sew up this throat. Dignified, noble, resisting the false accusation, Rabbi Aaron, scared but unbowed. The entire throng assembled there raged against Rabbi Ginz. The crowd wanted to attack him and tear him apart like a fish for his impudence toward the priest. But the policemen and soldiers who surrounded Rabbi Aaron did not let anyone approach him. The head priest then turned to Rabbi Aaron once more. Can't you see how your crime has been revealed like the light of day? The judges will no doubt sentence you to death. Therefore, I want you to know that if you confess before the corpse and sew up the throat you have slit, you will be doing your soul a favor. And if you'll only admit your guilt and tell us who enticed you to commit the crime, you won't come to heaven bearing such a burdensome sin. Dude, he's not a Christian, right? Like, if you don't confess, Jesus won't accept you into heaven. Dude, he's not a Christian, right? Like, none of this. He's not going to fucking care, right? Oh my god, it's like, I don't know, it's like a Jew coming up to a Christian and being like, if you don't, like, celebrate Passover, Hashem is going to be very angry with you. And the Christian says, like, what, like, this, mate, this is so weird, right? My soul doesn't need any favors, was Rabbi Aaron's reply, for it is innocent of this crime. Seeing they were getting nowhere with him, the priests ordered him returned to the prison. Then Kozilek was brought to the Christian cemetery in Prague with great pomp and splendor. Meanwhile, the Jews of Prague were terrified and filled with gloom. They feared walking the streets of the Christian quarter. And the city of Prague was dumbfounded. This blood libel frightened the Maharal too, and he went about sadly, for he also lost his credibility in the eyes of the authorities, who saw that all his hope was in vain. He had promised the police chief that soon the truth about this false accusation would surface, but now the opposite held true, since there was no defensible explanation for the bundle of Kozilek's clothing hidden in the sand in Rabbi Ginz's cellar. Don't worry, I'm sure that the Maharal, through some kind of cunning device, will solve this problem. Although the Maharal knew full well that this was a false accusation, how did he know? Right? I mean, how did he know? Right? Presumably, right? Like Rabbi Gin said, I didn't do it. Maharal's like, oh, it's good enough for me. I'm a Jew. You're a fellow Jew. You wouldn't like lie to the Maharal, right? Or perhaps he used his mystical sight, right? And like, or like communed with the Golem or something. Okay, right? It's just naked partisanship. He knows it's not true, because if it were true, right, they would all be in a pickle, right? Although the Maharal knew full well that this was a false accusation and realized that this libel was cunningly engineered, he could not say anything and did not dare speak out now, and so he kept silent, noble, reserved. Still, he ordered the entire community to publicly recite psalms during the morning service until the conclusion of the trial, not wanting to ordain a fast during the month of Nisan. Yes, there's actually a month called Nissan, not the Japanese car manufacturer. But this misfortune brought on another. Oh no, the priests of Prague issued proclamations and warnings to the Christians to take care not to enter into Jewish homes or even into their shops, for any Christian who entered a Jewish home could not be sure of his life and would be committing a deadly sin. The masses heeded the priest's warning, and the livelihood of the Jews came to an end. Okay, so mass boycott, basically. Seeing the scope of this great calamity, which brought many other troubles in its wake, and sensing he had no more ideas how to bring out salvation, the Maharal directed a dream question to heaven. Sorcery. I knew it. He's either going to ask the Golem, or he's going to use some kind of like sorcery. He got a clear answer composed of the following words. You shall investigate and inquire and interrogate thoroughly, and your children shall return to their land. Oh, that's pretty cryptic, right? So he didn't like get like a dream. I was like, oh, it's that guy. The answer invigorated the Maharal and caused him to rejoice. Now there is hope. The truth will be revealed. He consoled his congregation. Pretty sure sorcery is forbidden under Christianity. I don't know, right? Like, in fact, I think it's like forbidden in the Old Testament too, but whatever. The day of the trial approached on the 1st of Sivan, the day of the new moon. The Maharal also sat in the courtroom. However, there were more irrefutable proofs to convict Rabbi Aaron than to exonerate him. What were these proofs? I mean, you're the detective story writer. Tell us. In short, the judges rendered a guilty verdict against Rabbi Ginz and his 3 sons-in-law and sentenced them to 15 years of hard labor, while each of the wives was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. Relatively light sentence given the crime, honestly. Okay, so I've got a question, right? Rabbi, why were the sons-in-law also convicted and sentenced? Right? Like, it was just, it was found in their house, therefore, like, everyone in the house, I don't know. Only the children were exempt from punishment and were freed at once. This verdict saddened all the Jews of Prague, and the Maharal too was dejected. Nevertheless, the Maharal, unable to sleep, did not rest, nor was he still. It was absolutely clear to him that Kozilek had died suddenly from tuberculosis in the place which he had fled, and there was buried. How was it clear? Look at the magic site. Later, his brothers stole the body and brought it to Prague. They also stripped Kozilek's body of its clothing, stole into the cellar, and hid him there. But it was difficult to prove this because, first of all, no one knew where Kozilek had run to, and hence where he had died. And second, how could this be confirmed if his real name, which had been recorded in the municipal records and the death registry, was not known? For it was common knowledge that Kozilek was only a nickname. he's gonna find the mother. The mother is going to tell him about like the stolen wares. He's going to get like the real name. He's going to be like the Mooish Sherlock Holmes up in this bitch. Therefore, the Maharal initiated an extensive inquiry to learn where Kozilek could possibly have fled. And because logic would dictate that he ran to his place of birth, the Maharal tried to find out from Kozilek's co-workers at the tannery if they might have heard either from him or from the two Kozlovsky brothers where they were born. After much effort, the Maharal succeeded in learning from the tannery workers that the brothers were born in a village 4 kilometers from Prague. The Maharal then sent wise and diligent men to that village to find out all they could about the Kozlovsky family. So, right. So I'm presuming they bribed and threatened the people at the tannery, got the information, then sent like a bunch of people to bribe and or threaten everyone in the village, would be my guess. There they discovered the family history and address of their widowed mother. See, told ya. Then but they could not get the woman to say a word about her young son, Kozilek. See, because the widow knows snitches get stitches, bro. I haven't seen him since I sent him to his 2 bigger brothers, she insisted. It seems to me he's in Prague working the tannery. The men returned to the Maharal with no further information. But when he heard that the mother's village was indeed the brother's hometown and that it too had a Christian cemetery, the Maharal declared, now the way has been cleared for me to learn the truth, and I will be obliged to use supernatural forces. Every dead man's soul, he added, must hover over his grave no less than 12 months after his death, for during the first year, the soul still has a slight connection with the body of the deceased. But if the dead person is not in his grave, then his soul is not discernible above the grave. However, not everyone, only men of lofty attributes and animals, beasts, and birds can see these souls. And Yodl the Golem has the capability to see these souls just like the animals, beasts, and birds. Well, Golem does make an appearance. Okay, so necromancy. The obvious question, the obvious answer to this pickle, right? Don't know why it took him this long to resort to necromancy, honestly. That is why the Maharal asked the government to let him send 2 men to examine the outside of all graves dug during the last 3 months in that village's Christian cemetery. Thus, he would be able to learn from which grave a body had recently been stolen. To give him the authority to force the gravediggers to point out these graves to his emissaries, the Maharal asked the police chief, put your order in writing and send 2 policemen to me who will accompany my emissaries and examine the graves. Right, so the Maharal gets 2 cops and like a letter and goes and starts like threatening the gravediggers, okay? The police chief fulfilled the Maharal's request and sent 2 policemen along with his order to the village gravediggers, bidding them to immediately show the 2 men all the new graves opened during the past 3 months. The Maharal then summoned Yodl the Golem to instruct him how to proceed, and also sent with him a smart, capable man who too was told about their assignment. They undertook to carry out every one of the Maharal's command. The Maharal's 2 emissaries, accompanied by the 2 policemen, traveled to the village. After sending for the gravediggers, they all went to the Christian cemetery. The inspection commenced. Just as the Maharal, with his amazing insight, had expected, so it was, for Yodl the Golem placed himself next to a grave and signaled that it was empty. There was no corpse in it. One of the policemen rushed back to Prague and told this to the police chief. This news was also immediately conveyed to the Maharal. The chief, accompanied by many of his men, went at once to the village. So did the Maharal and several community notables. The gravediggers opened the grave in their presence, removed the coffin, lifted the cover, and saw that it was empty. Wait, we got a Ko-Fi? Wait, let me see. Where's my where's the my windows are all messed up. Wait. Where is it? Here we go. Ko-Fi. Let me see. Who we got? Mikey again. Thank you very much. Thanks for the history of this fabrication. It's been informative and fun. Thank you very much. Super Joe's midlife crisis also brought a beer. Newsfist, you're the goat. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Oh, thank you, Super Joe. Aw, it's really, really nice. A rat named Mouse also bought a beer. Thank you. Finally caught you live. Anyway, so did I get this right? It's not blood libel because it wasn't ritualistic in nature, but it was politically and racially motivated, as well as a conspiracy at the hands of the powerful elite. Really beating them allegations are, yeah, well, look, don't think about it too much, mate, right? Like, you might come to the wrong conclusion. Thank you very much, guys. Kind of Venture Brothers, Ardent Party, kind of Venture Brothers meets Constantine. I know, right? It's so weird, this, right? The police chief then immediately sent word to the village priest to bring him to the church's birth and death registries and said, tell me who was buried in this grave. The priest looked and found that a few days after Purim, a young boy named Jan had been buried in this grave. This information that the mother of the Kozlovsky brothers was named Yadvina had already been known earlier to the first emissaries. The police chief then realized that Kozelek had indeed fled to his mother's in the village and that he had died in her house and been buried in this grave. The two brothers then stole his body from the grave to initiate a blood libel in revenge against their master. The police chief interrogated the priest meticulously to try and remember who had come to request a permit to bury the dead boy. The two brothers of the dead youth came to me, the priest recalled, but since they had no money to pay for a burial permit, they asked me to take a silver watch. The priest then took the watch from his pocket and showed it to the police chief. See? It's all about to come full circle. They've got the watch. They've got the mother. Those two brothers, they're about to get what's coming to them. When it was discovered that the silver watch was among the items stole from Rabbi Aaron, the police chief took it and sent a quick carriage to the city. He asked the coachman to show the watch to Rabbi Aaron to confirm whether it was his, even at a distance. The rabbi immediately recognized his watch. The police chief's conclusion was that a false blood accusation had secretly concocted against Rabbi Aaron. Accompanied by all his men, the chief now left the cemetery and burst into the widow's house. Where is your young son, Jan? He bellowed. I haven't seen him since I sent him to his brothers in Prague to work in the tannery. Yadvina repeated her earlier denial, trying to conceal the matter even from the police chief. But after the chief slapped her face twice, shut up, bitch! She fell to his feet, wailing and pleading, stop and I'll tell you the whole truth. The policeman stood her up in front of the chief and she confessed. My young son came with me with the stolen items. He grew weaker and died at my house, and his brothers came to visit him and buried him. She also told the chief where in the village the brothers had sold the stolen goods. The police chief immediately ordered a search of that house where they found all the stolen items. Who sold you these things? The two Kozlovsky brothers sold them to me. The chief ordered the arrest of both the widow and the man who had bought the stolen articles and sent them to the prison in Prague to stand judgment. See, it's all gonna work out well for the Maharal. On his return to Prague, the police chief did not go home. Rather, he and his entire force burst into the house of the two Kozlovsky brothers to find and arrest them. But they were no longer at home, for surely they had heard that the truth should soon be known, prompting them to flee Prague to some unknown location. Cowards! They should have remained and faced their righteous justice at the hands of the Sanhedrin, whatever. The governmental authorities then concluded that the two brothers alone had secretly fabricated this blood libel. Rabbi Gins and all the members of his family were immediately freed, and the city of Prague was festive and happy. After this incident, the Maharal's repute spread throughout the world and his fame in all the lands. Fear and dread overcame all of the anti-Semites. In other countries too, the furor over the blood libel abated. The Maharal then recorded this event from beginning to end in the form of a letter, as it is reported here, and sent it to King Rudolf. He also included a request for an audience with the king, for he had something of great import to discuss with him face to face. So the king accepts the Maharal's request. The Maharal goes before the king, and he falls face down at his feet and weeps. Put an end, he implores, to the evil anti-Semites who constantly aspire to pour scorn and humiliation on the Jews by means of the false accusation of ritual murder. The Maharal then asked the king, please issue an edict to all the courts in your land to annul all blood libel trials brought against them, for the sin of punishing and tormenting perfectly innocent people is borne by your entire kingdom. Okay, interesting. So, it doesn't really matter if there's any evidence or not. Just, get rid of all the trials. And he did this purely by just pleading with the king with no other kind of, Okay. The king was very astounded that the Maharal had fallen at his feet amid tears and pleading, and had nothing to do with the loans that he owed his people. He himself seized the rabbi's arms and requested of him, rise up from the floor, noble Maharal. The king honored the Maharal by offering him a seat next to him in a chair already prepared for him. The Maharal spoke to the king for an hour about certain matters, probably loans, and then was sent home with equally great honor. But he did not want to reveal what they had discussed. Yeah, it was about loans. 1 week later, the king promulgated an edict to all the courts in his domain, prohibiting any further blood libel trials, and the land was tranquil. I mean, except for all the horrible stuff the Gentiles had to go through. But for the Maharal and his people, it was tranquil. Right, we got another Ko-Fi. All right, we still got the actual death of the Golem to go, but it shouldn't be too long. So this is going to be slightly long. Where is the why are my windows so stupid? Why? We got another Ko-Fi. Jephistopheles also bought a beer. Thank you very much, mate. I love this genre of fabrications. I was wondering if you and Clowntown perhaps could review Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I fear it is relevant to these times. Love the show. That is a very good suggestion, Jephistopheles. I have been wondering where to take clown-based life forms, when we sort of run out of stuff. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. See, that's a good one. Thank you very, very much, mate. Right. So on to the final part of the book. I'm gonna miss Rabbi Yodl Rosenberg and his weird sort of fevered fabrications. This has been a trip. How the Maharal brought about the end of the Golem. Now, this is as I said at the opener, this is much, much less dramatic than any of the actual tales from Helm or other places actually in well, I guess it would be Bohemia when this was all supposed to be going around, right? I'm where's Prague now, right? After the promulgation of King Rudolph's new laws abolishing blood libel trials in his domain, the Maharal noticed a period of calm. Another Passover holiday had come and gone, and nowhere in all the king's realm was there a hint of blood libel misfortune. Then the Maharal summoned me, his son-in-law, Rabbi Yitzhak Katz, and his student and assistant in rabbinic courtroom, Rabbi Yaakov Sasson Halevi, who with me had participated in the creation of the Golem. From this day on, the Maharal told us there is no longer any need for the Golem, since blood libel trials are now prohibited in these lands. Right, so according to Rosenberg, and this fits with the general sort of tenor of the book, the entire reason for the Golem to exist, who definitely was not just some mute Gentile boy that had been pressed into service, and there's a thing after this where he talks about the qualities of the Golem, and it is very, very weird, right? Where it really sounds more like some just unfortunate dude they've pressed into service than an actual created thing. But anyway, this event took place on the night of Lag Boma in 1590. The Maharal told Yoseli the Golem, "Tonight you will not sleep in the courtroom, but rather carry your bed up to the attic of the great synagogue, where you will lie down to sleep." The Golem obeyed. Now it was almost midnight, a time when no one sees or hears what is happening. So about 2 hours after midnight, I, his son-in-law, Rabbi Katz, and his student, the rabbinic judge, Rabbi Halevi, stood before the Maharal. The rabbi at his table posed the following question to us. Can a dead man like Yodl the Golem transfer impurity to another person? The Maharal's incisive reasoning was even if after his death the Golem would remain flesh and bones like all other human beings, the issue of impurity was not applicable to him, especially since the Maharal had understood from the beginning that after the Golem's death, he would once again be a pile of clay and dust, just as he was before he was created. So the Maharal is basically, well, look, if we kill him, is the body going to like rot? Where are we gonna like leave this corpse, right? If he turns to like dust, like if he just turns to dust, then surely there wouldn't be any need to like hide a corpse or anything like that. This is very, very sussy. The way this goes down is particularly sussy. Therefore, the Maharal took me up to the attic to participate in the death of the Golem, even though I am a Cohen. This is how the Golem's life ended. All three of us went up to the attic. The Golem was asleep on his bed. The Maharal also permitted the old Shamash, Reb Chaim, who held 2 lit tapers in his hands, to follow, but he was ordered to stand a bit further back. All three of us stood by the Golem's head. To bring about his demise, all we had to do now was reverse what we had done when the Golem had been formed and brought to life. And just as we had once stood at his feet facing his head and circled him 7 times, starting on his right side, we now stood by his head facing his feet and began to circle him starting on his left side, in order to withdraw from him his soul and his spirit. Now, too, we circled him 7 times. Each circuit began on the left side of his head and continued around his feet to the right side of his head. Then we stopped and, following the Maharal's instructions, recited some combination of letters. This we did after each of the 7 circuits. The combination of letters we recited now were the very same we had recited then during the creation of the Golem, but now we said them backwards. Okay, all right. Anyone who has an understanding of practical Kabbalah and a thorough familiarity with the Book of Creation will grasp the secret of the creation process, as well as the secret of annulling it. Yeah, all right. Okay. Kabbalic magic. Yeah, fine. Perfectly normal. Right? Like, you know, what could possibly go wrong, right? Nothing demonic about that. After the 7 circuits, the Golem remained lying on his bed like a lump of solid clay in the form of a man. Then the Maharal asked the old Shamesh, Rabbi Chaim, to approach. After the Maharal took the 2 tapers from his hands, we stripped the Golem of all of his clothes except for his shirt. And since the attic contained many torn prayer shawls no longer fit for ritual use, Rabbi Chaim gathered a few of them and we wrapped the Golem's body with 2 old prayer shawls and tied them together. This is so weird. The way he's describing this is exactly like the way all of the murders were supposedly faked. Ah, mate. Then we took the Golem's rigid body and, obeying the Maharal's instructions, hid him under a big pile of tattered pages from damaged holy books that were then stored in the attic so that no one would see where the Golem was hidden. I thought it would turn to dust. Does it turn to dust or not? Whatever, right? Midlife crisis Joe, why would a Golem wear clothes? Well, because, I mean, he's got a ding dong, apparently, right? Like it's very, very, very weird. This whole, right? Bring the Golem's bed and clothing down from the attic to the synagogue, and to prevent anyone from noticing, burn everything a little bit at a time. Isn't this exactly the kind of things that you were being accused of? No, you don't understand. This time we were doing it for a good reason, and he wasn't really human anyway, so it doesn't count. Okay. Afterward, we descended from the attic, washed our hands with water, and went to sleep. In the morning, we spread word that since something had angered the Shemesh, Yodl the Golem, he ran off during the night, but no one knew where. This is exactly the same stuff you were accusing the Christians of doing, like making up stories, like, to cover for someone's disappearance. It's okay when we do it, I guess. The masses in Prague believe this. Nevertheless, a mere handful of great men in the city who possessed lofty attributes knew the truth. The second week after the Golem's disappearance, the Maharal proclaimed a ban. No man or woman shall dare ascend to the synagogue, and no longer may it be used as a storeroom for torn or damaged holy books. His concern was obvious. People's carelessness with fire up there could easily cause a conflagration that would turn the entire synagogue into a roaring inferno. But the Maharal's close associates knew the real reason: not to make known where Yoselay the Golem lay hidden. I mean, so he doesn't turn the dust. He's still there. He could be resurrected. I mean, this sounds just very sussy to me, right? Now, I'm going to finish off with just a couple of things. So firstly, like I was saying, this is definitely different from the classic version, right? Of Helm, Elijah of Helm. Elijah Bar Aaron Judah Baal Shem was the Polish rabbi and Kabbalist who served as the chief rabbi of Helm, one of the most eminent Talmudists of his generation. He is recorded as the first person known as by the epithet Baal Shem, right? Having been considered a great saint and believed to use miraculous powers to create a golem. This is the Golem of Helm. I don't know how to pronounce that, right? Now, according to this account, this is the sort of account he was made from clay. He wrote truth on his forehead. But to erase this, to stop the golem, he just erased one of the words, meaning that it became Emet or something like that. Emet is Hebrew for death. To stop, okay, right. Yes, in this story, the golem kept on growing and getting stronger. To stop this, the aleph needed to be erased from the word ms, leaving the word mis, dead. When the rabbi noticed that the servant had grown so large he could no longer reach his forehead and erase the letter, he came up with the trick of commanding the golem to take off its boots, assuming that when the golem bent over, he could erase the letter from his forehead. And so it was. But when the golem returned and turned to clay, all of its weight fell on the rabbi and crushed him. Now, I prefer these sort of older versions, particularly the sort of subtext that the golem is a Gentile or a group of Gentiles that have been turned to service to protect the Jewish population, but then they get all uppity and they go a bit, crazy, basically. A similar account is reported by an unnamed Polish Kabbalist writing in about 1730. Except this time the name Emet was hanging upon his neck until it was finally removed for a certain reason, and then it turned to dust. The Rabbi Jacob Emden elaborated on this story in 1748. As an aside, I'll mention here what I heard from my father's holy mouth regarding the golem created by his ancestor, the Gaon Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem of blessed memory. When the Gaon saw that the golem was growing larger and larger, he feared that the golem would destroy the universe. Okay, when people like this say destroy the universe, they mean destroy the Jewish community, right? Not literally destroy the universe, okay? When the Gaon, he then removed the holy name that was embedded on his forehead, thus causing him to disintegrate and return to dust. Nonetheless, while he was engaged in extracting the holy name from him, the golem injured him, scarring him in the face, right? Now, the classic narrative of the sort of more OG version of the Golem of Prague is, I believe I explained this, but I'll just go over it again, briefly. The Golem was a good servant to the Jewish community, helped them on Shabbat, and protected the synagogue from the wrath of the Gentiles for no reason whatsoever. But the rabbi had to give it one day off a week, which was a Sunday, right? And then he stopped doing that because he got old and lazy. And then the golem went all crazy, trashed the synagogue. And apparently in Prague, there is a special prayer that is said twice, even to this day, in memory of this event. Then the rabbi managed to deactivate the golem and hid him in the attic. And there's, and this is part of sort of the legend of Prague. There's still a golem hidden in the attic somewhere, basically, right? But back to Yodl Rosenberg. This is the last chapter. The Maharal's remarks concerning the golem. My saintly teacher and father-in-law, the Maharal of blessed memory, said, 1. Excuse me. According to the law, the golem is not obliged to perform any of the mitzvahs, even of those incumbent upon a woman and a slave. But for the sake of appearances, the Maharal ordered the Golem to obey several mitzvahs for everyone to see. Yes, because the Maharal, in this story anyway, was disguising the Golem as a shamash, I think it's called, a synagogue attendant, essentially. 2, the Golem did not even have the slightest hint of either the good or the evil impulse. Everything he did stemmed from his great dread that he would immediately cease to exist. All of his actions were like that of an automaton, so he was effectively a slave held under threat of death. Okay, great. 3, performing tasks up to 10 cubits above and below ground posed no difficulty for the Golem. Within those limits, no barriers held for him. Okay, weird, right? You see these kind of like weird kind of like restrictions in like, old grimoires and stuff like that. 4, the Golem has the power to see spiritual things on a low level, slightly higher than animals, beasts, and birds, and slightly lower than demons and ghosts. Nevertheless, even a righteous man who possesses a divine soul and has free will cannot see spiritual things unless heaven grants him a special power for this purpose. As we read, God opened her eyes. Right, so the Golem, he's got the sight, but it's sort of, like it's a bit shady, right? Like not compared to the amazing sight of a rabbi, for example. 5, the Golem was created with a special power that prevents him from being killed with any weapon. Neither can he be burned by fire nor drowned in water. Okay. 6, the Maharal was able to draw into the Golem only a limited understanding in keeping with his level of spirituality, but he could not imbue the Golem with even a minuscule amount of wisdom and knowledge, since he was not worthy of having a divine soul, either from internal or external radiance. You see the parallels to attitudes towards the Gentiles here. You know what I mean, right? In the sort of, more sort of spicy and supremacist texts like Maimonides, for example. 7, there was another reason the Golem could not have been created with the power of speech. He was not worthy and suitable that the light of divine soul shine within him. For he only possessed the power of vital life and spirit. As is written, he breathed into his nostrils, and the breath of life, and man became a living creature. The Aramaic translation states, man became a speaking creature. Thus we see that the power of speech emanates only from the level of a divine soul. Even though the Golem does not possess a divine soul, and hence cannot have the extra Shabbat soul. This must be the Jewish soul they're always like talking about. Nevertheless, one could discern that on Shabbat, his face was more luminous and appealing than on weekdays. And from this, one can understand what the Holy Zohar teaches, that on the Holy Shabbat, the dominion of stern judgment is less intense than on weekdays. For these judgments are in the category of darkness, while Shabbat holiness is in the category of immense light, so powerful it crushes the dark forces. And the rays of light of Shabbat holiness spread throughout all the realms with such a great and mighty power that its influence even reaches to some small degree the great darkness, which is the source of these stern judgments. And even though it is absolutely impossible to disseminate light directly to that place, it can still shine there as a reflected light. And thus the darkness is by itself diminished, and the power of these judgments is weakened, even in a great ignoramus who has no desire for this light and no concept of what is happening. Again, parallels to the Gentiles. In any case, some kind of spark of light from Shabbat holiness appears within him, and that is why our sages of blessed memory said that an ignoramus too is afraid of telling lies on the Shabbat. Okay. 9. The Golem had to be created without the power of reproduction or desire for a woman. For if he had such desire, even if only on the level of beasts, which is much less than the desire in human beings, he would have caused us enormous trouble. Because of his great strength and vast power in this matter, no woman would have been safe from him, as may be seen in the verse. The sons of the gods saw how beautiful were the daughters of men, and they took as many wives as they liked. Okay, so this is weird. So if Yosele, the Golem, had a weenus, he would have effectively been a Nephilim and impregnated many women. Gentile women, I presume. That is why the Golem was not subjected to any weakness or illness, for he had no desire that stemmed from the power of the evil impulse. Therefore, for him, everything physical existed on a level proper and fitting for him, according to the criteria of his body, no more and no less. And if people like us could behave in like manner, we would never experience weakness and disease. Okay? Oh, yeah, this is great. This is why, even without a clock, the golem always knew the hour during a 24-hour period. For during every hour of the day, a different fine scent blows in mightily from the lower Garden of Eden and spreads immediately all over the world to cleanse the air we breathe and eliminate the poisons created in it. And the greatest danger is for human beings. The lower Garden of Eden had 24 kinds of fine scents that contain all the medications in the world. Moreover, many kinds of grasses and plants exist that absorb these fine scents, which is why they possess the power to cure several sorts of ailments. Okay, never heard this before. Why, when these 24 fine scents do not cleanse the air properly, or if this fine scent cannot reach a certain place, then an epidemic, God forbid, could break out. And because the golem's olfactory sense, is at the proper level of perfection, since he never suffered from any kind of defect, each hour he is able to sense that hour's ascendancy of a different fine scent. And by virtue of this, the golem can sense what hour it is. Minutes, however, he cannot discriminate. Every righteous person can achieve that level of sensitivity. And the most important thing is casting off one's physicality. Again, this, I don't know, it just sounds like a mentally deficient slave. But anyway, when the Maharal attempted to draw some life spirit into the golem, two spirits appeared before him, one of Yosef Sheda, the other of Yonason Sheda. He chose the spirit of Yosef, for he had already helped and saved Talmudic sages from many kinds of calamities, which was not the case with the spirit of Yonason Sheda. And what's more, one can see from the Talmud that Yonason was not a master of mystical doctrine. After his death, the golem cannot transmit impurity to others because his body was not born, just made. Similarly, an animal created in like fashion does not have to be ritually slaughtered, nor does the prohibition of eating a limb torn from a living animal apply to it. If it is not considered a carcass, it cannot transmit even a drop of impurity. This, of course, is referencing one of the Noahide laws about how you can't eat the limb of a living animal. Don't know why anyone would want to do that, but it's one of the Noahide laws. 14. The golem spirit will return at resurrection of the dead, but not in the first body of Yosef Sheda, nor in the second body of Yoseleh the golem, but in a third body formed by the union of a man and a woman. He will be drawn into this world before the coming of the Messiah by a righteous person who will set aright something very necessary and of great import, which will still be an absolute secret. And he may be given the power to resurrect the golem's two previous bodies. As it is written, he drew upon the spirit that was on him. That's a bit of a stretch, right? I mean, the 15. The golem will also have a share in the world to come. This is the Jewish concept of heaven, which is highly debated, depending on which sort of sect of Judaism you're talking about, right? Many believe it's like an actual sort of earthly paradise, right? Where the Gentiles will like serve them. He will have a share in the world to come, not because he observed any particular mitzvah of the 613 commandments. Yes, there's 613 mitzvot, but because he saved Jews several times from great calamities. Even though he was obliged to do this, he is nevertheless worthy of reward, like a servant who is treated benevolently by his master, especially since we see that when the golem was in the body of Yosef Sheda, he did not necessarily have to perform the good deeds he did, but acted of his own free will. 16. All Jewish demons mentioned in the Zohar will be purified and have restitution by several transmigrations. So this is an interesting thing that I discovered. There is a tradition of reincarnation in Judaism, but unlike the sort of Buddhist idea, it's not infinite reincarnations until you sort of reach, nirvana or whatever it is, but a series of purifications where you can sort of get rid of like great stuff on your soul and finally sort of get into heaven. I suspect that this is where the idea of purgatory in Christianity came from. Actually, an alteration of this idea, because in OG Christianity, there's no such thing as purgatory. Their spiritual repair will be accomplished not through Torah study or the observance of mitzvahs, for they were not present when the Torah was given at Sinai, but by doing good deeds for the Jews, saving them from misfortunes and persecutions, as did Yosef Sheda. In this manner, they too will be worthy of the world to come. This, by the way, right, like roundabout, is an excuse for demonology, right? He's basically saying that, if the demons in the Zohar, they do like good things for the Jews, they're like repairing their evil nature. Again, there have been similar arguments made when the Christian clergy was infested by the practice of black magic. The idea that, hey, like it's fine if we traffic with demons because after all, they have to obey God. Don't do it, bros. Just don't. There's nothing good there, right? Don't do it. 17. One does not have to study the combinations of letters as printed in the book of creation in order to create a man or an animal. A man who studies the combinations of letters only from this book will not be able to create anything. First, because of printer's errors, and secondly, because much is missing. Second, and most important, is the comprehension in its own right that emanates from the person himself. He has to know at the outset which spiritual lights each letter hints at. Then he will also understand of his own accord the physical powers inherent in each letter. This must be studied, and even after intensive study, this matter is dependent upon the degree of the man's understanding and his righteousness. Even if this person writes these combinations of letters in a book, no one else will be able to make any use of them unless he knows how to meditate on the needed permutations by the power of his understanding. Again, this is more sort of like Jewish ritual magic stuff, basically, right? All the, the weird letters and the combinations of letters, and you can do all this like stuff and blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't recommend it. 18. The second week after the death of the Golem, the Maharal prohibited anyone from going up to the synagogue attic under the pretext of fear of a fire breaking out in the huge pile of pages from old, torn, and tattered holy books. But he stipulated specifically that this prohibition is not applicable to any rabbinic judge who succeeded him in this rabbinic post in the holy community of Prague. He could ascend as long as he was not mortally afraid of a demon. The ban should not restrain him, but only on the condition that he went up to the attic merely to look at and not make any changes there. Under no circumstances did the Maharal ever want to include the Golem in a quorum of 10 men. He said that even according to the opinion that a woman can be included in a minyan, the Golem cannot be counted, since in this matter he is on a lower level than a woman, for in no way can he be considered an Israelite, as in the verse, I will be sanctified in the midst of the sons of Israel. Women, however, are occasionally included in the category of the sons of Israel. Moreover, women in any case are obliged to abide by all the halakhic prohibitions of the Torah, which is not the case for the Golem. And there you go. That is the end of what was the complete title of the book? The Golem and the Wondrous Deeds of the Maharal of Prague by Rabbi Yodl Rosenberg. That was a very interesting journey. I do hope you you enjoyed this one, guys. I don't know what I'm gonna do next week, but I'll find something else to do. Probably gonna just do some one shots. Thank you so much for all the super chats. Let's just wait. Bloody window. Who did we? We had super chats from Jeff Astopheles, Mikey Bikey, Super Joe's Midlife Crisis, a rat named Mouse. Thank you very, very much, guys. I really, really appreciate it. We will be back next Monday with something else. Just say goodbye to everyone in the chat. YouTube, Art and Party, Midlife Crisis Joe, Christos, Mount Hazel, Parker Reed, Searsite, Arakin Green Moon, 007. Good to see you, Sar. Yes, Nick Nielsen. Who else we got? Rat named Mouse. Thank you for super chat, mate. Fireball Whiskey. Anybody else? I think that's everybody. On Rumble, Yiz the Eunuch, good to see you, Yiz. Mikey Bikey again. Total Blackout Painting, good to see you, mate. Teabagging Therapist. And I think that's everybody. And on Odyssey, Theos 19. And I think that's it. Odyssey's been a bit quiet recently. Right. So thank you again for coming. I will see you all next week. Good night, bros.
Fistory.